Okay. Consider an act on request for adjustments. Okay. Consent agenda, does anybody have anything they want to remove?
On page 3, item 11,
Item 11's the. Oh,
page 3.
oh, no, okay,
That's in your, the minutes, right?
yeah,
I go over them now, or you want?
yeah, go.
Okay, so I believe what we concluded on that item 11, because we had a discussion about the bonds and what was subject to arbitrage and what was not, and the calculations that were presented at the last meeting. So what I think we agreed to is that we should delete the sentence, well, where it says unlimited tax bond series 2022, and then period. And the rest of that should be deleted. And then in its place, we should put no payment is necessary at this time. The county manager to request a review of the calculation due to the unusual manner of this particular bond issuance. And and we need to evaluate for proper liability reporting in our books. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but did you make contact with them?
Did, and they're reviewing, and to see what, it's a very unusual situation, so he just doesn't have a quick answer
Okay.
right now, so, yeah, they did confirm that the contributions from the districts would not be included in the calculation. We do know that right now.
Good. Awesome. Thank you. So I'll get together with you after the meeting. Thank you.
Are there any other changes to the minutes?
Number 13, we've already identified, we'll change that. It says, extension to motion direct metro we've corrected that.
Okay.
Already.
We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. All right. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Same sign. Okay. Nothing else to remove from the consent agenda? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item 9, receive and act upon request for nominations for the upcoming Montgomery County Appraisal District Board of Directors election and adoption of a resolution in connection therewith.
Election, which at the end of the year, when we had the one last year, we knew there was another one coming up. This is for 2 positions, appointed positions. At the last election we have, apparently there were some calculation errors on the number of votes and what position they would take, the 3-year or the 1 year. And that was for 5 positions. 3 of them were going to be 3 years and 2 of them were going to be 1 year.
Right.
Arthur at one point was at the 3-year and there was a calculation error somewhere. They're looking into it, won't have anything until Friday. He will possibly be put on the 1 year, okay, instead of the 3-year. So he's running again, and this is the nomination process. So you have a resolution in the folder.
Yeah.
And the rules and everything for the nomination, but that's it. Arthur's going to be running again.
So is he the only candidate?
And since you're nominating, we don't know who
Oh,
other
okay,
candidates
okay.
are going to be.
He's
on
obviously
that.
sitting there looking at us. And welcome. Arthur. I appreciate your explanation, but it made no sense. It's not your fault. I have here in front of me the agenda for Friday's meeting, of the MCAD Board of Directors, and they're going to discuss and take action pursuant to the 2025 election results. So we had an election. We thought we had a lot of trouble. If you remember, we had a lot of trouble understanding how the election was run. In fact, Mrs. Hunter came here to try to explain it to us. I remember we all had questions, and at the end of the day, they changed it last minute on how it was going to be counted. And they told us that, as you said very, very eloquently, 3 people were going to get 3-year terms and 2 people were going to get 1. As I understand it from what they've told me, we don't know which 2 candidates are getting 1-year appointments. and are running out of time. Is that correct?
At this point, we won't know
So,
until Friday.
so here we are, the MCAT is asking us to nominate a single person for two positions that they don't even know who are being vacated. And they're giving us a deadline to make this nomination, and we have to do it today because she wants to hear by the 15th of next month, which is after our meeting. So this is like, I feel like I'm junior high and somebody's making up rules about how to run an election. And yet this is the MCAT group. It's a group that's been there a long time, have a very vibrant board of very experienced people. And we're running this kind of election where we're nominating somebody for a position we don't even know who's going to go. For instance, let's say Arthur really is a 3-year guy and we nominate Arthur, nobody else gets nominated. Do we elect Arthur to this new position? What happens to the position he currently has? Are you going to resign it? It's nothing for you to answer. It's just, I'm shocked that every MUD, we have 10 MUDs and we're being asked to do this in a process that's inane. It was terrible last time. It's terrible this time. I don't know if I hold the MCAT board accountable for running a joke of an election. I don't know if I hold the state legislature accountable. But what I do know is they're asking us, honest MUD directors from all 10 MUDs, to participate in an election that we don't know what we're doing.
Not only us, I think everybody in the county is getting the same thing.
Exact thing.
And yet here they're pretending, yeah, nominate somebody in this business as usual. I don't know what we can do as a single MUD or what Eric can do as 10 MUDs, but something needs to be drawn. I don't know what happened, how we could not know who won after election months ago and how we can be participating in the second phase of this without knowing who we're replacing. Eric, is there something you can do as a representative of the 10 MUDs to get the attention of the MCAT and say, these deadlines make no sense relative to MUDs in their monthly meetings. This process is completely convoluted, and we need help understanding it before we nominate and vote.
Or at least defer the deadline so that until we know what the recount and the results of that recount is.
Deadlines are statute.
And why are they having a meeting this meeting on Friday is a special meeting. They're so desperate, they had to call a special meeting trying to get this stuff done. Why didn't they have the special meeting a month or two ago before they asked for nominations?
Because it was just brought to their attention what the potential issue is.
Well, then maybe everybody on the MCAT board needs to be replaced. Because if you're running a business like this, you don't know what you're doing. This is terrible.
Mhm.
My nominations replace them all.
What do the other MUDs do that have met so far?
Made a nomination of their choosing.
Are those nominations subject to retraction after the Friday meeting and before our July 15th meeting?
No, I think there's, Arthur reported, I guess it was, I don't remember which meeting it was, but with very high confidence that this will go from 3 to 1. So I think that was what the nominations were made under, was that is very likely that he will move to the 1-year slot.
Are you suggesting the board took action before the meeting?
Or
MCAT.
Okay.
So they're telling people that they know you're 1 year, but we can't tell anybody until we vote on it?
no, but
Hmm.
my understanding is that it's been brought to their attention what the problem may be.
Okay.
And if that is true and they recount, then they would know what the number.
Yeah, because they passed out a spreadsheet at the end of the voting, right? And I'm still trying to understand what the numbers meant and how they picked who got 3 and who got 1. But they apparently did, and now they're being asked to recount their spreadsheet. That's just sloppy
Mr. Chairman,
business.
is it appropriate to ask Arthur to say a few words here?
Sure, go ahead.
Probably address some of the questions. First of all, what Jeannie says, a lot of these timelines are by statute, right? So the MCAT board or any CAD board cannot change the statute unless it's changed by the legislature. The question about how the terms were picked, the top 3 vote getters out of 5 received a 3-year term, and those numbers were communicated back. The 2 least vote getters received a 1-year term that started in March and will end in December of 25. Now, I can't officially say that I have the 1-year term, but there's a high confidence that that will be the outcome I have to talk in these terms,
Yes,
John.
I understand.
I know.
Otherwise,
Look,
I'd be having this meeting.
Look, I know it's
appreciate that.
confusing. The reason we're having a special meeting because our regular board meeting was held on the 5th of June to get the draft budget out prior to the statutory deadline of the 15th of June. So we're having a special meeting to deal with this. And the nomination process, as Jeannie said, those dates are by statute. So it's unfortunate that this road juncture has taken place in 25. Now, the two people that win the election in 26 will have a 4-year term because the legislature wants to have all these terms staggered and everybody go to a 4-year term once all of this election has passed through. So the 4-year term will start in January of 26, and those directors, those candidates that win in the 25 election will start a 4-year term in January. Then the 3 remaining directors will complete their 3-year term. There will be a citizen election in November of 26, and those will be 3 spots that all voters of Montgomery County can vote for.
How long are those terms, Arthur?
They should be a 4-year term. Now, they may be staggered. I don't have the specific timelines, but eventually everybody that serves on a 9-member board and specifically in Montgomery County will have a 4-year term, but they'll be staggered terms. 5 will be appointed by the taxing jurisdictions. You'll have the 3 elected, and then you have the tax assessor collector. That's a statutory position, and that makes the 9th position.
I appreciate that explanation.
So I hope I answered some of the questions. A lot of this is a surprise to a lot of people. That's why we have to have this special meeting to discuss it in public session.
I appreciate this, the deadlines of being statutory, so we have to work with that. I accept.
We have to work with that.
So what you have to do is get your business done before the statutory times are up. I hear you had a budget meeting, but this was running concurrently. So how the heck you drop this on us last minute because you didn't get your work done in your board meetings is unacceptable.
Well,
And so once again, I'm going to say everyone on that board needs to be held accountable for what's doing. The last election was sloppy. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I recall that you guys, some of the people on that board were serving even though their term expired because you hadn't had the election. Is that not correct?
we were carried over board.
Exactly. So something's going on in that MCAD board that is not being, it's not being run efficiently at the very least.
John, just to try to answer the issue that is now before us was not aware when we had our January 5th meeting. Had it been aware at that time, things would have taken place at that time.
June 5th.
June 5th, sorry, June 5th. So I don't
So
want to,
something came, you're saying this, I didn't watch the tape. So something came up in June 5th that questioned the terms of the elected board.
that came up after the June 5th meeting. And that's why we have to go. And this Friday,
Votes or something.
this Friday was the earliest we could have a special meeting. So I have to stay tuned to the Friday meeting. I hope I've tried to address some of your concerns. I will take back your overall concerns to the board and share that on Friday.
Appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you guys and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Go ahead.
In order to address this issue, I would ask our attorney if we could take a vote based upon the very high presumption that Arthur is on a 1-year term and that we would be, or that he would be for a 4-year term.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Well, if I'm on a 1-year term, I intend to run for reelection, and the term that the 2 successful candidates that win the election will start to be a 4-year term in January of 26.
If you find out you're a 3-year term, will you still run?
Well, if you're a 3-year term, you're serving.
He's serving.
Yeah, I know, that's the question. So let's pretend you're our only nominee for the special districts, Arthur. And he finds out he's a 3-year term, not a 1-year term. So what happens?
I think that's what Paul was.
He serves 3 years. And
Yeah, so what happens?
somebody else has to run
Yeah, but
for the 4-year term.
that's my point.
Well, I think that's what Paul was.
I wanted to get your opinion about a provisional vote that would, if we were to vote and make it provisional upon the outcome of the results on Friday, that what Arthur is presenting is the case.
Absolutely. I mean, Eric's going to be holding all these nominations because they don't have to be submitted until, the forms don't have to be submitted until that 15th deadline. So if, what ultimately occurred was that Arthur had a 3-year term as opposed to a 1-year term, then those nominations wouldn't be submitted for Arthur. They'd be held back and we'd have an item on next month's agenda to rescind the nominations.
But it would be
But
beyond
here,
But it would be said, it's Eric's gonna.
July
Yeah,
15th.
exactly.
But-
It's before her deadline.
but you should have clarity on whether Arthur has a 1 or a 3-year term that's waited just well before the July 15th deadline. So basically, Eric's going to be holding all these in escrow until we hear what the outcome of the meeting is, and when Arthur's term is.
But I think what I'm hearing Paul say is if you want to make a nomination, with the assumption that he goes to 1, that's whatever you choose. If he ends up keeping the 3, then you make a contingent alternative nomination for whoever is in one slot. Is that what you were
I'm good.
pushing?
Well, you went a step that's too far for me, but I haven't gotten there yet.
That's what I was gonna suggest is,
Motion is to make a nomination. If it's for Arthur, that's the nomination, and for Eric to hold that in escrow pending the result of the MCAT meeting. If Arthur is deemed to have a 1-year term, that nomination is provided to MCAT. If it's not provided to MCAT and the nomination is rescinded.
Of course, the reality of this
Yeah,
whole thing.
but
is-
then we-
I'm sorry.
but then we don't have the opportunity to nominate somebody for that one position, if
Well,
that should be the case.
I think that's another question that I don't know has really been ferreted out. I mean, the district's votes go to a special district candidate, which is Arthur. So even if Arthur's special district position has 1 year, or sorry, 3 years, I don't know what your nomination would accomplish.
No, because there wouldn't be.
Well, here's the reality though, is that other MUDs have already nominated Arthur. Other MUDs have already nominated other candidates. So regardless of what we do, if it's one of those 2, or if there's more, I don't know, you would know. It doesn't make a difference what we do, because the nominees, any board can nominate a name that's going to go on the ballot. So those 2 names are already going to be 2 names that I know of are on the ballot. I don't know, of our MUDs nominated anybody else, if you can tell me? I just know 2 names. So they're already there. But my frustration is we're all doing this in mud, can't see what's happening. Shit's, I know, it's terrible.
I agree, it's frustrating. I want to make a motion that we nominate Arthur just so we can deal with the rest of this later.
Contingent on him having a 1-year term.
Exactly.
Is there a
I like
second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote no, and it's not because of Arthur, it's because of the stupid process.
Okay, 4-1. All right, item 10, review the regular monthly STR Woodlands Division report. Chris,
Our report begins on page 23 in your packet and goes for quite a few pages. Nothing out of the ordinary, Woodland or GRP, no violations, no major catastrophes, no major equipment failure. And, be happy to answer any questions if you have.
anybody have a question?
No, good report.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Okay, item 11, review of the draft Woodlands Division budget. Ed, is that you?
That's this young lady. You say yes, it is and walk out.
That's what you do, and then he's forced. But good afternoon, everybody. My name's Haley Longhorn. I'm with the accounting department at SGRA. The draft budget is in y'all's packet, and I did give the presentation at the trustees, but I'm happy to give it again if y'all would like, or if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. The highlights of the budget is our rates are not changing for the wholesale water and wastewater. So the water will stay the same at $2.73, and the wastewater will stay the same at $5.65. And then the GRP blended rate, or the surface water conversion that y'all see on your bills, is proposed to decrease 4 cents to $2.93. That goes to the review committee on Monday to be pushed.
And for Eric, that reduction will be passed on to our customers
Correct.
once it's effective.
No, it speaks highly of the quality of the work that's being done and how we are being our expenses relative to our customers.
But it's also, I think it's, I'm gonna let this group know, other MUDs don't necessarily do that. Other, outside the Woodlands or other entities, they keep that rate without adjusting it. But we made a decision early on that we would pass on what the actual rate was. If it went up or if it went down, we would make that adjustment. Many entities are not doing that.
They're adding on.
And we'll add on.
They're adding on a multiplier, that's right.
Oh, is that right? Well, compliments, guys, well done. I support that.
Yeah.
And then the other highlight is in July, we'll be asking for y'all to direct your trustee to vote in the August trustees meeting on the budget. And then, like I said, I'm happy to go through the presentation if you want more or if you have any questions.
I did watch the video in detail and I appreciate that you suggesting that. So for me, I don't need a detailed presentation, but certainly any questions a board member may have.
So I was just curious, under the lobbyist, the Cornerstone, what is it, a little more about what they do or give an example
Yes.
of their action?
So they were supposed to come in June, but they got called away. So they are going to be here in July to do a little bit more detail. I can take a stab at it or Ed or Eric. They say it a little better.
They're the ones that got us $5.4 million for the Bear Panther project, Fan project, and the Station 24.
Okay, that's
I
good.
was just looking.
We're gonna need more.
There's, yeah, we're gonna need more. They're also, this isn't gonna, hit a highlight reel maybe, but it is, it shouldn't be underestimated. They have been working hard over the last year and a half to revise the federal definition of a special district. Because the special district on a federal level defined, did not include MUDs. And so they've rewritten that, worked to rewrite that, worked with legislators to get that changed. And that's, it's now being carried by multiple individuals and it looks like it's going to go through.
Okay.
So the result of that is that will allow us to potentially get different funding, get at different funding buckets that we wouldn't have been eligible for. So it's not an immediate return, but I think it's a big win for us with potential down the line.
Okay, that's all I was looking for.
Long-term.
Thank you. Thanks for the
Thank you.
explanation.
Let's wait for that. I just want to draw attention to slide 45. Compliments on this water loss. I know it was the AMI. I know that's been happening for a while, but that's pretty impressive what's happening. And I'm hoping when the new installs of the bigger AMI. Exactly, Mr. Stinson, thank you. But hopefully the new ones will do an equal job of helping with the losses, Eric. So that's a compliment. Can you tell me about page 48? The interest, you said in your presentation at the board, the trustee meeting, you're doing something different. I just want to get a little more detail on that, on the way you calculate interest income and why.
Yes, so that was a methodology change in our department. For the most part, we normally didn't really budget for interest. It was just if we made interest, great, then we have money in the budget, but we weren't, actively trying to hit a goal of interest. So it was a methodology change with how well interest rates are right now and the fact that we are pretty much guaranteed to earn interest at this point, that we started kind of putting a little bit more conservative budget in the interest line. So it was really just mostly a change in methodology. We are earning more interest than even the budget we put in here. But the other side of it is, I keep joking and saying, if we don't calculate interest correctly, we budget way off. We have to go to Chris and say, what do you want to cut? Because now we have a budget problem of we expected X amount of revenues that we didn't get. So now we need to cut expenses. Otherwise we
So you have to have a zero balanced budget?
Yes.
Is that by the state law?
I think it's just by contract with y'all as part of that excess
That's
fund.
what I'm asking. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
It's part of that excess fund calculation.
Okay, and that's when we do the excess fund at the end, that you talk about. Okay, good, thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
I have one more. Okay. If no one else has any. Page 48. Major line item changes, and I noticed the software and support.
Yes.
It's a pretty significant increase. Could you tell me about that? And are you going to stick Doge on that to wipe out some of those excess Microsoft accounts?
Yes, we have talked about doing informally, we talked about doing some software audits and going through. We kind of did a little bit of a software audit, not the actual software part, but budget wise this year, because that number was even higher when we started the budget process. And I went through IT's budget and was like, oh, wait a second, we're double counting some things. So we did do a
Thank you.
budget audit, not an actual software audit of what
Right.
we're using, to get this number down, because we have a new payroll system that's online, just came online about a week ago. And they still had the old one in there plus the new one. So we did do some things to make this a little better. It didn't come down as much as I would have liked it to come down. But we did do a little mini audit of those things.
Well, thank you. That's good business
but-
practice.
Yeah, our Microsoft licenses are going up, for just our office products, that's going up. And then, just our general inflation on software. I'm told, I have not run the numbers, that our software normally goes up 3 to 5% every year. Just base, inflation on those contracts. And then, we also had some allocation changes in our software. That was one of the big ones that changed this number so much.
Say that again, please.
Yeah, no, I'll explain. So we have the G&A department at SGRA. And this G&A department, we have some things that, it's considered our indirect expenses, so that all those expenses are housed in that fund. And then the other divisions pay for those through their G&A allocations that y'all see in the budget. So this year they went through and said, well, you know what, this software directly impacts the division. So instead of it being indirect in G&A's budget and y'all pay for it through the allocation, they moved it over to the Woodlands direct budget, and that's why you see this line item going up.
So you're telling me I like the old way of doing it better.
Yes, but in reality,
There you go.
you really got the benefit of the past, however many years that was happening, of not having to pay for those softwares directly, and now there's a shift on those things. So that's part of what costs.
You're doing, it's good to know that the numbers are, you're looking at them, you're thinking about them, where can I bring it down? I appreciate that.
They had
Well done.
many meetings about that.
Thank you. That's nice to hear.
Anybody else have? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12, discuss water line condition assessment study presented at the All Muds meeting.
Yeah, that's just an item on the agenda to allow you all the opportunity to share your thoughts and takeaways.
I would say that my takeaway was tier 1, 2, and 3 should be pursued, especially tier 1, the AC line around Metro Center. And I have a question on the PVC water line out Woodlands Parkway. I'm trying to remember, it seems like I do remember one failure of that line where we had 200 or more customers out of water. Is that pretty much what we could expect? It could happen in another spot where there would be less, but it could be more.
Correct. We've added valves to different areas to kind of isolate that, but it just depends where it breaks. You could have that happening.
Well, I think it needs to be noted that when it does happen, that somebody may ask the question, what's going on here? And we should be honest. We should say we've identified it as a problem. And I would hope that we would have, here's what our plan is to get it fixed, rather than we don't know. And I think the residents that are most affected by that, if I remember, are Mud 46 customers. I know in the one incident that I remember, it was predominantly Mud 46, but it could be others.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'll be a shame if it breaks again and we don't have a plan in place to get it corrected.
Well, I mean, just generally, I thought the analysis of that day was very good. The presenter was really good, but it did reinforce for me, I mean, not going to make a big deal, but the importance, the lesson learned of the importance of having those consultants, drawing on a consultant and big projects like that to get an independent assessment of the situation, you know, because we certainly did learn a lot in terms of the AC cost and, you know, the timeline for having that it's going to have to be replaced. And so we'll just leave it at as an important lesson learned that we need to carry forward in all future projects of that magnitude.
Great.
Yeah, I think the consultant did a wonderful job. It was a pleasure to see what a world-class subject matter expert does with information. I think it was wonderful that the River Authority agreed to get those lines tested and went through all the work to test it. Because when we got the test results, we realized that yes, judging something simply on age isn't, especially AC pipe, isn't the answer to how to replace it or how to say it's not, it doesn't have a useful life. That was clear from the consultant's report that it's breakage data and a lot of other factors, not just age. So that was a lesson learned. So it was a wonderful report. I think in the all mud meeting, again, thank you for having that. There's some number of good questions. I think the consultant did a wonderful job of answering, but I still think there's a few unknowns that I appreciate why Jim says there's projects to be done. I agree with him.
Yeah.
What I don't know for sure, based on some of the questions that still remain to be answered, is which projects really get the priority and what's the timing on that. And the reason I say that, there was several concepts raised during that meeting about risk and then risk mitigation and the way they relate to the consequences of failure. So we couldn't tell from the meeting, and he was asked and we didn't get the answer. How does that affect the levels of service of the projects? Now, if we take risk tier 1, which seemed to me make sense, do they have to do that in 3 years or is it 5 years? And is one of those tier 1s more important than the other tier 1? Because I don't know that we can do everything at the same time. I don't know, but I'm curious as to picking the brain, if you will, I don't know what the right word is, to get that consultant re-engaged a bit to answer some of the questions about the impact on the level of service, risk mitigation, and how to best time these projects and define them. I did ask at that meeting, well, is it you gave you a 10-year idea, but is it really 7 or is it really 15? And he didn't have a good answer for that. So as we all know, there's a time value of money. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do projects. I'd like to get the projects clearly identified and timed appropriately so that we can proceed and as you say, Jim, you don't want to not have the work done that needs to get done. I just want to do it the right way with the right information. So I'd love to get him back in some form or fashion. I don't know if you have any ideas on how to do that. To query him a little further so we can get better identification and detail on those different projects within the tiers.
Yeah, I mean, we've sent some questions and requests to them. And so they're working on that package to respond to them.
Okay.
As far as specific level of service calculation, I don't know if they're necessarily working on that at the moment, but I know that was asked at the meeting. But we'll need to probably look at that.
Oh, well, yeah, no, definitely projects to be done. I have no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I want to make in my business, we have lots of projects competing for attention, right? And so we have to have a system to prioritize it. And then I have to go to the board and say, this is what I want to spend. These are the results you're going to get. And this is the time I have to get it done and to give you that. And I'd like us to be able to do that with the key projects. So we're progressing properly. Where do we go from here?
That's
I'm sorry,
the
Paul.
question I have.
Okay.
The 10-year project plan that is in existence needs to be modified as it affects the FY26 budget. My question is, and it alludes to all these new projects that have been identified and ranked, which I think is one of the superior benefits from this analysis, because it helps us spend the proper money at the proper time in the proper place. And it's not, oh, it's 40 years old and we got to do it here. No, it's not the best mode to measure. So it seems to me that we need to do something pretty quick, at least as far as those items that affect fiscal year 26. If the intent is to get it into that budget, and I think it should be.
Ed has sent me an official request to ask the MUDs to have a determination on what direction they want to go by November 1, with the expectation that once they know that direction, they'll be able to update the 10-year project plan, next year's 10-year project plan, which they do in the fall and winter and usually present early in the next year. So once those projects are identified or timed out, if you will, within the 10-year project plan, then we'll be able to do that very thing. Because one of the things that we do need to do is to take, so, you know, in the report, it contemplated about 120 million. So
Right.
I would think that you would want to know what the impact would be on the residents. You know, we knew what the impact of, you know, the bigger numbers were. But we're gonna likely want to know what that is as well. And the treatment plant's still sitting there. So,
Right.
you know, whatever ends up happening with that and the cost of that, we'll need to factor in as well. So, and it was noted at the meeting in addition on the water line stuff that the 120 is a 2025 number.
Yeah,
So likely that 120 will need to be adjusted depending on the timing that the roadmap, i.e. the 10-year project plan, spells out. So we're gonna need to, I think, decide, do we want to go forward with these projects? And then allow SDRA to, with the help of HDR and their analysis, identify if there's a proper place within the 10-year project plan. Then we can start looking at this financial evaluation to say, when do we need what money when? How much when? And the impacts to the customer.
I haven't, because I'm a relatively new board member, we haven't gone through this planning process with these capital projects. So they proposed a 10-year project plan, which is okay for the 10th, and I tier 1, 2, and 3. And I know you have a 10-year plan. So you'll incorporate by November 1st, incorporate this activity into a 10-year plan?
We will. So the intent is not to change the current project plan we have. It is part of the budget, but it's also unfunded because they're bond sections.
Okay.
So in order to run through everything Eric was talking about, y'all give us direction, we give back, here's a proposed 10-year plan, dates, times. And you still need to run your financial analysis and all that stuff. When we do next year's project plan, somewhere right around February to March, we'll incorporate it at that point in time, based off of everything y'all studied, everything you've looked at. So essentially this time next year, you'll have a fully updated 10-year project plan, hopefully including all the AC water lines and the wastewater plant in one, so we can go forward all the same time.
And can we start referring to it as waterline rehab? Instead of AC.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because we've talked a lot
Yeah,
about it
totally.
as AC, but now it's a mix.
It is.
Now it truly is waterline, so, which is exciting because it now, looks at the entire woodlands.
Yeah.
So it's probably more encompassing.
It's more comprehensive.
Yeah,
Very
it's
good.
good.
So where in that process do we start decide how to finance this?
That's on y'all side.
Yeah, I mean, I would think once we have a rough idea of the timing of the projects and where they're kind of slotted, then we'll be able to kind of identify where the stair stepping is, because it's not going to be likely an immediate jump. It's going to be, as needed. And so with the exception, you'll probably want to get out ahead a little bit with the rates, perhaps, just to get some funding in place to pay those first bills, if you will. I don't know if Cap I will be included or not, but in either way, once we have kind of a revised timeline, then we can do that, run that financial analysis. Because, one of the things I'd shared with the other boards is, you might be looking at project one, let's just say Town Center was around 16 million. That one's already designed for the most part.
Right.
So let's say you plan to go forward with that immediately because it's already ready, almost ready. Let's just say it's 16 million. Well, you might say, well, 16 million only has $15, $20 impact for the customer or whatever the number is. And so you might go down that path because it's not that big. But by the time you look at 120 million and the treatment plant, whatever that is, over the course of 10 years, well, that's a different number. So that might have changed your philosophy on how you funded either and just because you went one way with the first project, let's say, doesn't mean you're obligated, or it could be a blend of different funding options. So, I mean, that's the thing that we're really going to have to dig into once we kind of better know where the projects are timed out at.
So you suggested we start this process in November, or is it more like Chris said, early next year? The money side.
Sooner the better. We're asking for up till November 1st, because after November, you get holidays, a lot of people maybe not meeting in December, pushes into next year. Next year, there's going to be elections, everything else. And so the MUDs that y'all sit now have a very good understanding and knowledge of the last 2 to 3 years. And so on our side, we're looking for decisions on these things so we can form going forward. So.
When you do your 10-year plan, now that we have some real concrete things that are look pretty, like a lot of projects need to be done. When you build your plans, it's simply that we can get this done at this certain time, or do you run some sensitivities on the capital expenditures as they load up along those projects?
It's a little bit of everything. Also, if it's gonna be cash funded, it's more with the sensitivities of, well, the first thing always is, when's it gonna fail and do I need it for regulatory before something happens in the system? That level of service. Then we look at the sensitivities of, okay, do I do it in this year or next year? Okay, tariffs and stuff like that, all that type of stuff. If it's bond related, it doesn't include a lot of that because typically you have to spend the funds within 3 years. And so then it's just a workload type deal. I do design 1 year, construction the next. When one's under construction, I'm doing design. That way I can do construction the next. Wrap it up in 3 and done.
Yeah, we have a lot of new board members that were elected in May of last year that haven't gone through this kind of major project funding and analysis. I'm wondering if it makes sense to have a workshop of some kind to talk to them. I have a lot of questions and I don't want to take up the whole board time because some of these guys have this down, right? But I think it would be good for a lot of us new board people to sit down with you, Eric, and the River Authority and talk how we go through this process and what's expected of us to come up with the right things at the right time so we can help you help our residents have the right projects.
I'll tell you, the magnitude of this one is new for all of us. It's big enough that we haven't faced this in the
I
past.
think that'd be a good exercise for us to go through so that we don't get just all of a sudden trying to make stuff up.
I think the first step is gonna be, because we've talked about this through a few MUD meetings now, is gonna be for the trustees, most likely next month, to give direction to the River Authority about moving forward with the town center project and then putting these projects into the 10-year plan and you know, ranking them in terms of the priority that we've talked about. And then that will come back to the trustees and then to the MUDs. Presumably, once we have a roadmap of, okay, these are the priorities, this is where they fit in the 10-year plan based on the River Authority's determination, then the financial advisor will need to get involved and say, okay, if this project's going to be done this year, and this tranche is this year, then they come up with financing tranches. You know, if we're going to have this amount of bonds in this year, this amount of bonds in that year, this amount of bonds in that year. That's when it comes to me, would make sense to have a workshop. Once we've got those pieces in place, come back to the boards and say, all right, this is the roadmap of what the tranches would be. We're going to have to talk about how do the districts pay for that? Do we pay for it in rates? Do we pay for it in rollback tax? You know, what are the different mechanisms, a flat fee, what have you, and work through that, because that's going to be what's critical is facing for your retail customer. When are these projects going to be done? What is the roadmap for the cost?
I appreciate why you say that, but I think we missed the critical point there. And the critical point was we have a long list of projects that may slide 5 years, 7 years. We don't know. And we won't know that until we sit through and go through the process of what input we can have. You assumed in your discussion of how to solve this was the 10-year plan was pretty much done by the River Authority and we're just going to figure out how to pay for it. I'd like us as all the MUDs, we have to give instructions to our trustees to vote appropriately. What projects make sense for all of us to be participating in, having a discussion about the scheduling of the projects and the financing?
Well, I mean, I think that's ultimately going to be for the trustees and for the districts to decide, how much involvement do the trustees or the directors have in individually ranking versus the experts have in ranking the projects.
As I pointed out at the beginning of my comments about this, the experts had an answer, but when we queried the expert on why he picked risk over risk mitigation and how that impacted the consequence of failure and why those projects were picked, we didn't get a good number. When I looked through his report, he has some indices, but it's not, and it may be just his best thinking, and that's good. And we can hear that. I'm an engineer. I've seen this stuff for 50 years, and this is a 2-year thing, and maybe you could hit this flat. I'd love to have that. But in that presentation, nor in the 500-page report, we didn't have that. So there's still detail missing. And it's not.
Eric, you're working on some follow-up questions for the consultant, so it sounds like you just need to, coordinate with Eric to have those additional questions.
So I'm hearing you're adverse to having a workshop before we do the November, say, hey, we need a 10-year plan?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, like I said, a matter for the trustees and the directors to decide how much, they're directly involved in ranking the projects, right, versus having the consultant experts do that.
I guess I was under the impression the trustees work for their mud boards, but I guess it kind of goes, there's 50 of us, right? I would love, and there's a lot, I mean, I think that you saw in the all mud meetings, there's a lot of people showing up and a lot of people asking good questions. I hate to have that collective wisdom not used to suddenly say, okay, that's it, we're done.
So, Chris, if we go with the November timeline and providing input, would that mean that some of this waterline rehabilitation would work its way into the 26 capital budget? Or is it, we're beyond, it's beyond that?
So the town center is the only one that I understand is going to be on the next, possibly going to be on the next trustees meeting to move forward in FY 26. Starting 25, moving to 26, we already have the cash on hand. It's basically a budget amendment. All the other ones, we have no cash for, so you'd have to figure out the financing, likely it'd be FY 26.
Just town center.
There's a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, item 13, receive update regarding Sassa Bear Branch, Panther Branch, Research Forest Drive drainage improvements.
Yes, the stakeholders had a meeting a week or so ago. Consensus of that meeting was to take the information that we've received with the engineer and the memo they've created, compare it down maybe into even further executive summary, and then set up a meeting with some local agencies, local and state agencies that might be able to help with funding, and try to put that meeting together and see if there's any, see if we make any headway towards finding additional funds to bridge the gap of the shortage.
How soon will you do that?
Well, as quickly as we can, but dealing with some pretty high level folks at some different agencies. So, and I'd like to get most of them in the room at the same time, ideally, but so hopefully in the next month or so.
What's the rough, pardon me, the rough order of magnitude gap that we're looking at?
About 10 million.
Our prior history on seeking funding has not been stellar for this particular project. What's your expectation? Has anything changed?
What has changed is to kind of maybe more classify the project as a greater mobility improvement project, to create a better ingress egress across Research Forest in those particular rain events, versus just saying, well, this is a drainage project that is going to improve the lives of 15 to 20 homes or whatever it was. So that didn't seem to resonate as strongly as perhaps the mobility piece of it will be. So difference being emergency vehicles can or can't cross Research with or without this project.
Yeah, voters just approved us a large county bond, road bond. So there's some funds available somewhere, right? Not all those projects were earmarked.
That's my understanding.
Yes, agreed. So we're going to bring some of them back in the room, some we had already talked to, and then bring in other agencies as well.
So this redefinition of special districts that Cornerstone was working on, does that open up a?
Potentially. And then I'm looking at some other avenues as well to see if there's funding. We got to find it. If we don't, then, not sure that there's much of a future for it at the moment.
I think I know, John and I agreed, we owe it to our residents to try this
Sure.
and see where it goes.
Sure.
Yeah, and not spend the 10 million because it won't do any good.
That's right.
That was the bottom line of the engineering study. The 10 million we set aside will not be effective in opening the roads or reducing flooding. So don't waste your money. Figure out, spend enough to have impact or don't spend.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
14,
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, one question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Eric? Sorry, on page 70, Eric, you mentioned the Amoresco Year 3 report on the measurement and verification of that AMI stuff. Is that worth the boards looking at just to learn more about the AMI program, or is that?
It will be once we're Yeah, once we get there.
When it's ready, would you give us a copy? Thank you. And also, last thing, page 75.
We hadn't gotten the general manager,
Oh, I thought we were in there.
but we,
Oh, I thought that's what we were talking.
Attorneys.
Oh,
we're up at 14.
go back to attorney's report. My apologies. You were rolling so good. I thought.
I try not to be the attorney.
I'm happy to fill my time.
I apologize. You were rolling so good. I was all.
I don't have much to report. The legislative session wrapped up. Thankfully, a lot of things we were concerned about, bills that were troublesome did not pass. We will have our comprehensive summary of the session for all of our district clients in the next few weeks. That'll get uploaded to Google Drive as it has the previous sessions. If you all have questions as you look over the bills, it'll have both bills that did pass as well as bills of interest that did not pass, but that we were closely following. A lot of times you'll see bills get recycled from session to session. So just because something may have failed in one session doesn't mean it won't come back in a future one. But if you have questions on bills, feel free to give me a call. Be happy to visit with you about it. We will have one bill that we'll be working on implementing during the next couple of months, which is a bill that requires for agendas to now be posted starting September 1st, 72 business hours before meeting instead of 72 calendar hours before meeting. And what that's going to mean from a practical perspective is that the deadline for directors to get items to Eric for MUD meeting agendas will be pushed back up to the Thursday or the Friday before the week of the trustee meeting, not the Wednesday or Thursday, the week before the MUD meeting. Because now the agendas will have to get posted during the day on Wednesday of the trustee meeting. So that will also mean that we will not be able to have separate agenda items added after the trustee meeting to a MUD agenda. That's crazy. We are working to have a generic item that would allow for discussion of matters that come up at a trustee meeting that we don't know in advance will need to be discussed at the MUD level. So we will have, some level of ability to have discussions at the MUD meetings. We're trying to find a way, and Eric and I are continuing to visit about this, but the goal is to find a solution that would allow for us to not have to change the date of the trustee meeting and move it back a day, because then you're having to coordinate schedules of trustee members and what have you. So it's a work in progress, but I think there's a path to be able to, make it work. But the functional impact will be directors need to get agenda items to Eric sooner, as well as a little bit more limitation on what we can put on MUD agendas following the trustee meeting. If in the interest of additional transparency, that 72 calendar hours, folks said wasn't enough time to get an agenda and have notice, and so this was the result. But hey, I tell folks, if this is the worst we got it out of the session, just say thank you and let's move on.
So it's gone to 72 business hours.
Correct.
So Eric works 24 hours a day. Can we do that?
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
No, they had
Hey,
it.
that was pretty close, maybe
I know,
18.
Already doing that.
So they were good about defining it.
There are rumors that there might be a special session, but likelihood that none of any water items would make it into
Right.
the
Yeah.
governor's short list of things to work on. Is that correct?
The governor, always has discretion to call, and sometimes he'll have an item of a certain import, but I have not heard of anything that involves the MUD world or water district world that would rise to the level of urgency that would require a special session, I suspect. Okay,
Thank you.
that's all.
Thank you.
Item 15, general manager.
I got some questions.
That's
Sorry.
Sorry, heard them coming. Our general manager report starts on page 62. As you can see, we continue to expand the general manager's report from what it was, trying to capture a lot of work that's going on across all the MUDs. And so you probably, above all, have a significant amount of work going on, particularly in the ditch world. But did want to point out that as part of the sanitary sewer rehabilitation project that is ongoing, that started construction over the last 45 days or so. So we'll likely see estimates coming in on that soon. But that is underway. I'm happy to report, and you can see quite a few pages on pictures on page 67 and 68. What you're seeing there, page 67, is the ditch in Windsor Hills area, that one of your residents has repeatedly requested help on.
Rightfully so.
Yep, and so that, there was some hog damage, not a whole lot of silt really, just, we did some minor cleanup and fixed the damage from the hogs. And so that's just, kind of a couple pictures on some work we did there. And then on page 68, this is across from the high school. You can kind of see one of the I guess, pictures there. It was fairly silted in. We did a test run on doing, so a lot of the ditches around the Woodlands have significant overgrowth of the trees that have kind of closed in on the maintenance berms, which is really what we would drive on, to get to and from. And they do have a purpose for moving rainwater from and preventing it from coming over the top of banks. And so that's kind of what, as you see this kind of secondary on the middle right and middle, those two pictures are, you see that's kind of a swale there on the middle right. That is a backslope interceptor swale. And so before this project, the trees, you couldn't see that. And so the contractor did a really good job to push back that, really not any heavy clearing, because if you kind of looked at the trunks of the trees, they were outside of the deal, but the overgrowth was kind of impeding. So they were able to clear that out. We desilted the pond or the ditch, and then we came in and repaired a pipe and then also created that inlet as well. So it did a lot of work on that ditch, and then it's been reseeded. So hopefully with the rain, some of the rain, getting back in there. So
Nice inlets.
yes, those are inlets. That's right.
I learned that last time.
So that was, we had budgeted that. That was, not your typical cleanup job. So it was fairly significant, but you had budgeted for that. And it is in response to the two residents that came to talk to you about it over the last year. So I'm happy to say we got that done for them. Got it done before hurricane season started. That was our goal.
Thank you.
Wanted to point out that Kim and I attended the AWBD last week, Association of Water Board Directors Conference, and I'm happy to also say that across the Woodlands MUDs, we had the highest attendance of all the Woodlands directors since I've been here. So that was encouraging. I'd like to encourage directors to attend and, find ways to get involved and also learn about various topics that are related to water districts. So that was pleasant to see. Had a good time networking and getting to know folks as well. So that was nice. Did your CCR report is here. That's the Consumer Confidence Report, which spells out your water quality, and that will be going out prior to July 1. And so no red flags or anything to note, but that is the results of your water quality testing that's been going on. So that'll go out as a separate mailer. It's on the website as well, and it's available to the public in several ways, but it'll be a separate mailer as well.
Is this a mandated format or?
Yes.
Yeah, boys, it ugly.
We can do some minor adjustments and change some of the wording and stuff. But
The EPA, believe it or not, they've got boilerplates.
Oh, I do. I do.
Language.
It looked governmental,
Yeah.
not informative.
yeah, we have we can author some different wording in kind of this prose portion.
I think it's the thousands and the titles. Yeah, that's not you. It's them.
We are extremely busy. It's kind of busy time for us with water usage going up. That's required. That results in a lot more calls coming in, a lot of transfers of people moving in, moving out over the summer as well. And then we are working through some issues with the new billing software. You'll see a letter in the back of the packet relating to that. Felt like it wanted to send a letter to all the Woodlands just saying, I appreciate your patience for those that have been affected by some of the glitches. It was mostly related to online payers and how one bank was talking to the other with the new account numbers. So we're working through those things. We haven't turned anyone's water off or implemented any penalties. So you'll see that.
No, thank you for that.
And before I kick it to John, let me, any questions you
Just
still
quick,
have?
yeah, just quickly. So you said the Amoresco report, when it's done, you let us take a look at it. In May, in page 75 in May, the door hanger went significantly up. Is something wrong or it's just the way of accounting?
Yeah, no, we, because April was the first billing month for the new billing, software, we didn't do any in April.
Okay,
And so it wasn't
Good.
necessarily that tripled, but it was because we didn't do them and we didn't want to there may have been some folks in there
yeah,
that, didn't pay, but we didn't want to penalize, everyone. So
Thank you.
that was,
Good.
yeah. That's it. Okay.
yes, sir.
John, communications.
Good afternoon. Page 76, start your communication report. John, following up on that discussion about the CCRs and how we are pretty constrained on formatting and so forth, but recognizing that it would still be nice to make that more digestible. So some conversations we had is maybe we can have an accompanying explainer. We have an online interactive bill explainer section to get you back on what is the SWCC fee and so forth. Maybe we could develop something like
My
that.
wife, she's gonna say, is our water any good or not? And it's- she goes, I don't understand the thing that's, I unfortunately took some chemistry class and I'm supposed to explain it to her, right? Thank goodness for this front page, I'd have no clue what I was talking about. I probably don't anyhow. But seriously, we want, I know it's a good report. We want to give our customers a sense that this is an excellent report. You have wonderful water. That's what they want to
Be
know.
celebrated.
Oh, man, you don't get it out of this.
Yeah, unlike you, most folks don't want to read, and so we just have to recognize that fact and see how we can give it to them
Yeah. Are we allowed to
in a more
Are
digestible.
you allowed to summarize it with a separate piece of paper or is that against the laws as well?
I think that's what you're talking about, has like
Uh-huh.
a separate document that would.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a separate document.
What is that doable? He said do it. I heard him.
It's not doable in lieu of.
No, not.
Governmental requirement.
But in addition,
Supplement, yeah.
Supplemental. Oh, cool. I think that'd be wonderful because most people aren't sure. I know they're not gonna read this. And if they do, it's like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. No, that'd be great.
in compliance section.
Yeah, that's all
That's
it
what
is.
you care about.
Yeah.
All those yeses.
There you go.
Okay, real quick, so we transitioned from a focus on water quality the last quarter to water conservation being summer months. That's an important topic for us now. So you'll see that reflected in our materials the next few months. Number of things happening on the infrastructure renewal communications front. Several updates to the website. We've added a page on the community working group. We have an interactive GIS-based map that's coming online soon. Help folks see where projects are happening, get information that way. A digital toolkit, help folks carry our messaging out and distribute through their primarily social media outlets just to get more information out and just try to maximize transparency and get as much good information out there as we can.
On that interactive map, will I know where I am? If I'm using my PC or an iPad, will it location identify so I can see it?
Yeah, I think we are going to be able to insert an address locator. We've at least talked
That'd be
about
good.
it. You know where we landed
Not
on that
G-
last?
Not, you mean GPS?
Well, I thought you would be able to insert an address.
Yeah, insert an address.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be able to find out where
Like
you.
all my apps spy on me, this one won't. Darn, it's the one I
Oh,
want.
sorry.
No, but a good point on the address, because like that mud map is really hard to understand. Nothing personal you did. It's if people are always asking what mud they're in,
Sure.
and you go, boy, if you could have a little, I type my address in and I'm in mud 67, that'd be wonderful.
We do have an interactive mud map online now, but it does not have that feature.
No,
So you gotta kind of know the geography of the
Exactly,
woodlands.
exactly.
If you're new, it'd be hard, yeah.
That'd be good, man.
Working group, they have their 5th meeting scheduled for July 1. Corolla will be there to present on that. I gave you some stats on our website, water.org website, May. So we've got average page views per month and unique visitors per month there. I want to note that starting in 2023, we implemented the communication strategic plan. Since that implementation, we've seen about a doubling in website visitation.
Wow.
And so we're holding strong this year again through May. Always want to see that climb higher, but feeling pretty good about that. And the one other thing there, I'd like to point out, that is a nice gauge. It's not the end all be all by any means, but it's a nice gauge of how we're doing overall with our communications, because we do link back to the website so much through our other postings. It gives us a sense for how folks are seeing all of our stuff. All right, current market materials, the next few pages, and then in the report you have our outreach calendar. I'll be at the farmers market this Saturday from 9 to noon. And then we're hosting the 4-H water ambassadors. They're going to be coming through after visiting the GRP on Wednesday. They're going to come here and we'll give them a presentation on women's water. Any questions?
Project summaries on water renewal. We heard Eric had a great suggestion about changing this from AC water line assessment stuff.
I heard that.
Just, yeah, because we are evolving. I know it's a lot of work, but the more you can update to tie to what we're learning from Carollo and from the other consultants, the better it'll be when we communicate. 'Cause I think we all agree with there's a number of projects that are going to be taking up time, and the more we can tell them with accurate information, the better it'll be. So thank you for all the work you're doing to get that.
Consistent terminology across the board.
Excellent stuff.
Thank you.
I see you had an ad in the community impact here on 78. Do you also do in the Woodlands magazine as well? You also?
We do that.
Yeah.
We don't pay for that,
Okay.
but we're in just about every edition of that.
I
we do pay
seem to recall seeing it there, but. I just
Yeah.
wanna
Yeah, that's the main outlet for us. Hearst Syndicate, that's the Chronicle and their larger syndicates, Community Impact, digital and print. And in fact, we just had a sponsored story on the community working group published in the online Community Impact. It just went live a couple of days ago. I'll put that in front of you next month if you miss it. And those are our 4 primary advertising outlets.
Well, let's see, I saw some weird thing on Nextdoor 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And it was 2024 Woodlands Water Check Disbursement Summary, item by item. Okay, what's that normal?
There was an information request from Adrian Heath.
That's who posted it, yeah. That's a full deal. So based on a FOIA thing?
No, he just wanted to know, he wanted
That's weird.
copies. He wanted copies
For Adrian,
You know?
Yeah,
Oh, so you have to tell me the story.
I know.
I just,
I know.
why is he posting this?
we don't know. It's basically your check register.
Yeah, it was a check register.
Yeah. Don't know. There's nothing
Or which
Strange.
was it mud
for
or?
the Woodlands water.
Woodlands Water.
And then he just posted it on, we heard about that yesterday.
Hope he does some good analysis. Let's help and tell us all where our money is. That's the only reason I see you get a spreadsheet of that is you want to see the disbursements, right? Here's where expenditures are. If we did that private enterprise, we wouldn't share it with anybody. That felt weird to me. I don't know why.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Data in the universe is useless.
It was like, and he posted it. Sorry.
Listening.
Paul, trustees report.
Thank you, sir. Just one note on page 80, where it says net gain on the financials. The WWA, it was a loss for the period of 150,000. And just a heads up, and I'm sure you guys are watching it as well, but the cash is 1.06 months. So in order to prevent another cash call, we need to make sure that work gets done and build out to the mud so we can increase our cash position by the end of the fiscal year. And
You knew that.
Nothing, we were
nothing new.
5.4 3 months ago. So we knew it would be going up once we started.
But
Getting
it's
some of this ditch work going.
not yet.
It's gone up 50%. Yeah.
Oh, the work may have, but the ratio is 1.06.
Right, but it was at 0.54, I think.
Yeah, but that was with a cash infusion.
Partly, but then also we mentioned that there was a lot of work to be done that hadn't been done
You
yet.
did.
So that has started now,
Okay.
including your work. That was a big one, and the meters are now rolling. There's quite a few.
And just one question for San Jacinto River Authority. And I realize, and I asked this question last Wednesday, and I'll ask it again. Is there anything that you can report, Ed, with regard to the city of Conroe and the negotiations that are going on? Because these articles that are released in the newspapers, they are misleading at best and sometimes just downright factually wrong. And it's affecting, tens of thousands of ratepayers all over the county, including the Woodlands, not just the city of Conroe.
Our general manager has had a number of conversations with the city administrator and assistant city administrator. If you think back several months, council authorized them to negotiate with San Jacinto River Authority to try and find a settlement. There have been a number of meetings. We have delivered some documents to the city for their consideration. And so we have not, that was about a week ago, we've not heard anything back.
So there's a case that Dominguez particularly continually reports on and says it's still pending. Well, it wasn't pending. The appeals court said, well, you tell us, what did the appeals court say?
Well, there are two things in play. There's a rate case and then there's a breach case, and the courts are looking at those combined. There are some, I'll call it inquiries to the Texas Supreme Court as to whether the court will hear another version of Quadvest's reason for breach. And we've submitted briefs, or I think, well, no. We owe them a brief. There was an extension. We owe them a brief responding to Quadvest's petition. And so that part is still pending with the Supreme Court, Texas Supreme Court. And so meanwhile, everything's on hold.
And what about the city of Conroe rate?
City of Conroe rate case was built into that because they looked at the breach and the rate case kind of concurrently. And then go one step further, the antitrust case with Quadvest, there's also, we think they're going to appeal that to the Fifth Circuit because they didn't like the ruling that they were not a winner from the local federal judge.
But they have paid, Quadvest has paid.
Quadvest is paid and are current with their.
Yeah.
We've got Conroe, City of Magnolia, and a couple other minor entities that are delinquent. And we are pursuing them as best we can. The minor entities we're pursuing, we're already in litigation with Conroe. They want more water. We've said no, unless you get current. And this article that you're referring to, originally it wasn't clear when Councilman Hardman said, we want 1.5 million gallons more water per day and we'll pay the going rate and no escrow. When you first read it, it kind of implied that they were going to get current on everything, and that's not the case. And then
I read it exactly the way he meant it.
yes.
Yeah.
And, his little statement of Conroe or SJRA needs to do the right thing for all of us. That's been said multiple times. Because we've asked the question, would you let a customer of yours be this delinquent? And they said, it's a totally different situation. Of course.
Yeah. Anything else, Paul?
No.
Well, I had one question from watching the trustees meeting toward the end, they were looking at topics for next meeting. They were talking about this easement. What,
The town center easements.
yeah,
that was put on hold, I think.
Yes.
You're working that easement issue.
If you recall, last year, the excess funds was allocated to purchase FY 23. Excess funds was allocated to purchase easement for the town center water line project. We met with, shortly after Commissioner Wheeler took office, we met with him to find out his, some of his priorities on road improvements. And the main one was Grogan's Mill, and he said, it's not in my 10-year plan. But our water line is a 50-year, minimum 50-year service life. And so he said, it may end up being 3 lanes in each direction. And so we put easement acquisition on hold. And the entire project has been on hold since last spring because of the water line condition assessment program. So one of what was discussed is coming back to the trustees meeting in July, and I think this was touched on just a little while ago, to allow us to reallocate that $1.5 million to go towards the new engineering work that needs to be done on town center to move the water line on the drawings outside the limits of any future 3rd lane. Once that's done, then we'll need to allocate funds for easements, go acquire easements, and then projects be ready to advertise for bid once engineering is done and once easements are acquired. And so, you know, it kind of gets back to the earlier conversation about priorities and timing and such.
It's going to be a fairly long lead item then.
The agenda item will just, essentially say discuss and or act on town center water line. And we'll either capture it that separately, or we'll put it all in one to say discuss and or act on the water line evaluation that was done. Then you can pull anything out of it at that point.
Yeah.
If you want. So it'll be on the trustee agenda and it'll be on your next agenda as well.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that comment by Commissioner Wheeler, but I also know, having been involved with that a little bit, I also know that the HGAC, their forward transportation plan, does not have that project on it for any timeline. It's just not there anymore. They've deleted it.
Okay.
Just for your
Well,
information.
you can always,
Yeah, I know. And I know,
the county can always reapply.
and we had been involved with the city of Shenandoah, and they passed a resolution whereby they oppose the widening of Grogan's Mill. So that's another hurdle that would have to be overcome in the future, because that would be critical to be able to do that project.
We just want to make certain our water line is not under any future payment.
I'm just sharing information, that's all.
Would it cost us more or cause us any great project delays to go ahead and do the design outside this 3-lane potential? In other words, if you're being prudent and saying my line's going to be there for 50 years, they can expand the road or not. I'm just going to not take the risk, get it out of here. Is it going to cost us additional cost, or is it just pretty nominal?
There'll be the additional cost to redesign. There'll be cost to acquire more easements. And then there could be a little bit of additional construction cost because of the couple of year delay that we've had. And also, now you're off into closer to the sidewalk and the bushes. So now you have sidewalks to replace and possibly reforestation to do.
When we look at that project and the trustees evaluate it, will they include that analysis, say, it's an either or and you can spend X now or Y later?
Well, the problem later is that corridor is very full. We're struggling to find a decent place in the right of way now. So we're better off in an easement outside. To answer your question, about 15 to 18 months for redesign and easement acquisition.
Yeah, relatively speaking, compared, if you had to replace or move that line later, that would be extensive, huge.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good points.
All right, thank you.
Item 19, discuss any matters for placement on future agendas. Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.